How do I pay my employees? How do I pay my rent? That's right. Now, there are people who literally, like 80% of business is the government business. Because, it's very, very prestigious. Like government.
Here we are live.
Okay, I guess one joke.
Okay.
Everybody, you gotta be here for the joke too.
I'm here. I'm sitting.
Okay.
I'm
gonna read.
to grab my seat.
Anybody here? Hello? You there? Can you talk back? Okay. Hello? Okay, so anyway. This is a joke. It's an interview with God. God asks Bush, "What do you believe in?" And Bush answers, "I believe in the free market and the strong American nation." "Very well," says God, or Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Come sit by my right." Then next God asks Obama, "What do you believe in?" Obama answers, "I believe in the power of democracy and equal rights for all." "Good," says God, you shall sit here to my left." Finally, God asks Trump, "What do you believe in?" And Trump says, "I believe you're in my chair and you should get out."
Oh, that was a
God
good
asks.
one.
That's a good one. Is that good? Okay, is this clean?
It's clean. Very clean.
It was clean, right?
I gotta send him the link so he'll see himself on the thing.
I don't know.
That was a nice one.
Okay, good.
Very nice one.
That's all I got today. That's all I got for today, Rabbi. We'll get back to you.
Okay. Come back with more jokes.
You put a Mount Sinai hospital, right?
I did.
Okay, and you know what Moses said to God when he went to the top of Mount Sinai?
What?
He said, "This is a great hospital. Great place for a hospital."
So he was a thinker, all right.
He was a thinker, huh?
Yeah, he thought in advance.
So
Okay.
I'm writing a paper on jazz music.
Yeah, the music.
Student.
Yes.
All the writers are Jewish.
Really?
And there's this one song, it's the most famous song that started the whole protest movement. It was written by a Jewish guy who was a high school teacher in New York. Parents were immigrants from Russia.
From Russia. Wait, jazz music? Is it Jewish music by orientation? It's not that much.
He wrote this one song, and Billie Holiday, this famous singer, sang it in 1939.
1939.
But we all thought she wrote it, and a Jewish guy wrote it. It's called Strange Fruit.
It's
about lynching.
Let me get some.
It's about lynching.
Let me get some refreshments. Hold on.
Wait.
Just water.
I want to see it.
Who was a Jewish guy?
You know what I found that's really interesting? I thought it's interesting. If you watch The Wizard of Oz, that was music was done by Jews, and Over the Rainbow. These are all songs. You think about it, where because after the Holocaust, a lot of Jews they all dreamed about being out of here, on the other side of the rainbow. It wasn't The Wizard of Oz. It was about those songs were meant about there must be something better over the other side of the rainbow. All those songs were written by Jews. It's just amazing how.
No, Broadway, and it's all Jewish. Have you seen that video about it?
I can imagine that.
Like King and I and all these songs, all these Broadway songs are takeoffs of Jewish rabbinical songs.
Or takeoffs of
The melodies are Hebrew. If you trace back the melodies, and there's a video, I can get you guys the name. You can look at it on Netflix probably. And all these songs were like modern versions of
makes you very proud, doesn't it?
Shuls singing. Prayer songs.
There's a woman, a conservative woman, who, to get people to understand how to daven, for example, before you say the Amidah, you do on a nice Anyway, so Veronica, there's a song, or Sing Shalom, there's actual melodies. Yeah, there's actually melodies, and you play piano. It's really nice. So it makes you remember, because a lot of the conservative movement, we don't have, it helps you memorize it better.
And the best jazz historian, Nat Hentoff, Jewish.
That makes you very proud.
He isn't Jewish.
No, I mean, actually, it's very hard to be Jewish. If you're a performer or an actor, it's very hard because, to be Shomer Shabbat you can see it's a lot of work. A lot of people say, okay, well, next week I'll do it. Next week I'll do it.
Easier now.
Oh, I need to give you the prayer. I met Litzman in New York, and he gave me that little thing to give you, the one with all the blessings. He said, give it to Richard. So I need to give it to you.
Okay, you gotta tell me, Mr. Smarty Pants. It says Chabad. Why do we have those two things there for Chabad?
Because it's an acronym.
It's an acronym?
Yeah, Chabad is an acronym. So that's how you do acronym in Hebrew. You do those little little things. That's an acronym.
I try to give you a hard time. I can't.
Is Elizabeth coming? Yes, you can have one cookie.
He knows about it. May I pour you a glass? Lovely. Do you want to? Are you gonna watch? So where's everybody?
I don't know.
Okay, why were we chosen?
Why were we chosen?
Chosen to listen to this.
This is a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
It's why people are angry at the Jews.
It is, and it has many answers. We cannot possibly hold all the answers to this question, but we could try and touch upon some of the topics that are related to it. So here's a joke. We start with a joke. Well, we had Richard's joke, which was quite a good one, with Trump. So this jungle joke, a jungle joke. Richard went to the jungles. So this American, French, Israeli world traveling in the jungle, and then they're captured by a group of cannibals. And the group of cannibals are planning for their feast. And now guess what? They get their feast worth, right? They get to eat these guys. So they tell them, we're giving you one last request, right? So the American fellow says, I want to eat something good. I want to eat my last meal. I'm going to die, but at least I'll die. I know I'm satiated. And the French person asks for a good cup of wine, good French wine, Bordeaux wine. And the Israeli guy sitting there, they're going to kill him. So he says he wants the chief to slap him in the face, to hit him in the face. So everybody's looking at each other. Oh, there you are. Everyone is looking at each other. What's wrong with the guy? He said, well, it's the final request. He said he wants the chief to hit him in the face. So the chief takes a step back and comes with the hand and hits him really strong, really powerful in his face. So the Israeli, struck, pulls out a gun and shoots everyone, the chief and everybody else, shoots them all. So the French and the American, they say, what's wrong with you? You had a gun all along? Why did you get us? He said, yeah, but I didn't want them to say that I started. So I had them to hit me so that I could retaliate. Because that's what Israelis do. They retaliate. That, oh, you started this war. You started, right? Yeah. You started. We never start any war. We always retaliate.
Rabbi Shlomi, are we chosen to the 613 laws of Judaism? Is that what we're chosen for?
We're chosen, yeah. That's
613. There was know them all. Back when you know them all?
No, you cannot. Well, you could know them all. You cannot fulfill them all. In order to fulfill all the 613 mitzvot, you have to be a man, a woman, a priest, a Levi, a king, a thief, because there's a mitzvah to return what you have stolen. And you have to lose something, you have to marry, divorce, widow. All these are aspects. So it's impossible to fulfill all the 613. It's just no such thing. There's some mitzvot that are related to different people. You cannot have them. So really, it's not respectful. We Elizabeth and I had a little correspondence around it. It's not respectful to say, I'm chosen, and walking around with arrogance saying, I was chosen by God. It's not respectful. It's not what we're supposed to do. And saying that I'm special is also not the most appropriate of things. But today we want to point out something that really fascinates many people. What is the uniqueness of the Jewish nation? Why are we special? Why do we feel special? Is this all in our imagination? Is this good to feel special? Is it bad to feel special? Is it really true? Are we really special? So we could open with a quote of one of the biggest American authors. Everyone knows Mark Twain, and he has famous quotes about the Jews. You know that quote of the Jews? Richard, can you read it?
Mark Twain.
Yeah.
If the statistics are right, the Jews constitute but 1% of the human race. It suggests a nebulous dim puff of stardust lost in the blaze of the Milky Way. Properly, the Jew ought hardly be heard of, but he is heard of, has always been heard of. He is as prominent on the planet as any other people, and his commercial importance is extravagantly out of proportion to the smallness of his bulk. His contributions to the world's list of great names in literature, science, art, music, finance, medicine, and abstruse learning are also way out of proportion to the weakness of his numbers. He has made a marvelous fight in the world in all the ages and has done it with his hands tied behind him.
Always you say, your hand tied behind your back. Yeah.
He can be vain of himself and be excused for it. The Egyptian, the Babylonian, and the Persian rose, filled the planet with sound and splendor, then faded to dream stuff and passed away. The Greek and the Roman followed and made a vast noise, and they are gone. Other peoples have sprung up and held their torch high for a time, but it burned out, and they sit in twilight now, or have vanished. The Jews saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was, exhibiting no decadence, no infirmities of age, no weakening of his parts, no slowing of his energies, no dulling of his alert and aggressive mind. All things are mortal with the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
That's beautiful, by the way. You executed beautifully.
Oh.
He wrote it in 1899. Would you imagine 2019? Now he wrote it 1899. How relevant it was then, how relevant it is today. Well, Mark Twain points basically on three phenomena, you could say, that make the Jewish race or the Jewish people being completely different than any other people around history. So he says, right, we'll start from maybe the second one. All the empires rise and fall, right? All the empires, we know, we learn history, modern history, ancient history. We learn the history of the East, the history of the West, and all the nations, we quoted the Babylonians, the Assyrians, the Greeks, the Persians, the Romans, right? They're all gone. There's some nice countries in Europe that I've left, but the empire, even the British Empire, which is probably the most recent of all, what is Britain today? It's UK, what is it? Scotland, England, what do they have? Wales, North Ireland, South, what is Ireland? Whatever it is, and that's it. That's where it ends. The sun never sets on the British Empire, used to be the saying, right? They ruled Hong Kong, Singapore, Bombay, everywhere. Nothing, right? All countries are now independent on their own. China is on its way to become a new empire. At least that's what they're trying to do. Whether they'll do it or not is a question of time. But what we are certain about is, even if they will, it's an empire, and eventually all empires fall apart. While the Jews, we were the same. Mark Twain writes in 1899, the Jews exhibit we're just there being excused. We don't have to do anything specific, anything special. It's just the fact we are. The second thing he points around is the Jewish genome, right? That was broadly discussed. There's even a Wikipedia page on this, the Jewish genome. A lot of people research whether Jews are really smart than other people. Is it really so? Jews coming from Eastern European countries, Jews coming from North African countries, and so on and so forth. It's a big scientific research whether or not Jews are smarter than other races. You could say that if you gather 1,000 random people into a room, so perhaps you will have 2 people that are Jewish out of 1,000. But if you gather 1,000 Nobel Prize laureates, what's it called? Laureates? So 220 of them will be Jewish. 22% of the Nobel Prize winners are Jews. So that kind of asymmetric ratio, right? 1,000 people, maybe 2 Jews, 1,000 Nobel Prize winners, then you get 220 that are Jewish. מה? אז הוא אומר... הוא כתב לי שהוא כבר הגיע, הוא אמר שהוא רוצה ארוחה אחת לשיעור למחר. סתם או שהגעת? סתם כל כך הרבה שהגיע בשביל ש... אז צריך לשלוח, והשני אמר שהוא יהיה ב-7:45. אז מה לעשות? לקרוא ללילה לשתיהם, אחד? לשניהם ביחד? אז לשלוח לילה אחד לשניהם ביחד? כן. אז בואי תרשמי, אני לא היה לי זמן לשלוח לך. מודקה זה בחדר... כי צריך להעתיק ולהדביק ולחפש את זה ולשלוח לך את זה.
מה אתה כותב?
מותקה גירו.
ככה במותקה?
כן, גירו. G-I-L-O. ובחדר 648. והשני יהודה האן. יהודה H. כן, עשי טוב. עכשיו רווח. לא, רווח. H-A-H-N. כן. הוא חדר 2350. אז מה, תשימי את זה על השקיות? תרשמי את זה על השקיות? בסדר.
The religion is in the mind, not in the land or the
Right.
and that might be some answer to why.
I'm wondering why it took 2,000 years to get back to Israel. Maybe.
To me, the answer for that is the book, the Tanakh, and the study.
Yeah, the study.
Yeah. That's of course. That's to me. Jews have to study it all. But you study the way you study is you command, and then it's not finished. It's not like Greek is a thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, and then it's finished. The thesis, thesis, antithesis, 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 antithesis. So it's to me it's a key. It's as simple as that. And it's a history which is constantly renewed every Shabbat. Every Shabbat, and then the question. So what's questioning? Nothing is decided forever. But you always have to put it into question. Yes. Whether the Jews are religious or not. Are what? Religious or not religious. Whatever religious or not. I mean,
They still keep, right, I agree.
So I think that's it's just a value of raising children.
I'm feeling pretty good about this whole talk.
Yeah?
Fine,
Yeah, I'm sorry. So,
I'm feeling pretty good though. Because
and-
like,
You are trying to challenge your teacher.
yeah,
Something
right. It's like what Dr. Einhorn says when a Jewish child comes from school. Not what did you study today, what questions did you ask today? That's the way to make you all intrigued. And the third aspect that Mark Twain touches upon, not elaborating on, is the fact that the Jews are hated. The Jews were hated and are hated, and soon we'll see there's some spiritual reasons for that.
Not in all countries, like in India and in China, the Jews never.
Yeah, of course.
China, they're having some trouble with us right now.
No, but we never had any issues with the
I
Jews.
mean, the government wants to give everybody, like in Shenzhen, you read a book in, they give you a hard time.
Yeah, but that's because government of China considers Israel to be a close ally of United States, and with all that, just political reasons, not racial reasons.
Before the Jews arrived in China a long time ago.
Yeah,
But they never encountered any
yeah.
hostility, and neither in India you have any.
They say that the reason why I have a book written about it, the Jews and China. The reason why I never encountered anti-Semitism was there were so little Jews. Whereas in Europe there was such a big amount of Jews. There's still more non-Jews than Jews in Europe, but there was a substantial amount, substantially enough to trigger. But as we're going to see, this is not what we did that makes them hate us. It doesn't have to do, because every generation there's a different reason. It's because we're too smart, because we're too stupid, because we're too successful, because we're not successful, because we're leading the economy, because we're leaning on everyone else, because we're protocols of the elders desire taking over the world, or because we're the dirt of the world. All these reasons always varied, but the same conclusion was always gathered. So he touches upon it, the most hated one. This is what Mark Twain said. Mark Twain wasn't Jewish. He wasn't Christian, I think, as well. But the thing is, a lot of people are moving in their chair uncomfortably hearing those arguments, specifically Jews. Okay? There's a saying in the world that when you see someone, and if you ask a Christian what they are, and they'll say Christian. If you ask a Muslim what they are, they'll say a Muslim. If you ask a Jew what he is, and he won't reply, he'll just move to another topic. You'd say, okay, this guy's Jewish. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to open it. He doesn't want to admit it. He's probably Jewish, right? Christian would say, well, I'm Catholic, I'm Protestant, I'm Mormon, I'm this, I'm that, whatever, right? A Muslim would proudly say he's a Muslim. A Jew? Don't you have something else to talk about? Why don't we talk about the weather a bit? How's your daughter? How's your son? How's business, right? That's what Jews are. And the problem is it starts from within. The world is become less tolerant to chosen, to the type of, but we're going to see soon why chosen is not racism. It's the exact opposite. You sent me a message today which elaborated on what does it mean to be a chosen nation. But really, since the Declaration of Independence of the United States, right, we know what the biggest issue, all men created equal. It's very not popular, it's very inappropriate for someone to say this race or this type or this group of people is higher, is superior, inferior, whatever. All men created equal is a big statement brought in the independence, right, the Declaration of Independence of the United States. And the second fact that people aren't comfortable with the chosen nation concept is that it has responsibilities. When you are chosen, when you're looked at, when you have a role, when you have a mission, when you have something to do that other people don't, it's more of a responsibility. Most people would say, let me out of it. I don't want to feel any special. I don't feel like I'm special. I don't want to be special. I don't want anyone to look at me, to test me, to check whether I'm doing my job or not. I'd rather be left alone. But that's the reason, people have issues and they can't come to terms with this chosen nation concept. So the biggest rejection of chosen nation doesn't come from the Muslims, from the Christians, from any other religion. It comes from within ourselves. We feel safer when everyone is equal. We feel safer when everyone, all men created equal. And we rather not have the extra responsibility of being chosen. I didn't read the letter about that. I have... Einstein, in the end of his days, took back some of the statements he said about theology, religion, God. I have a 700 pages Einstein biography that was published just 2 years ago. Someone gave it to me as a gift. I have it upstairs. I haven't even opened it yet. I promised him I'll read it. But it's a very, very interesting book. It speaks about, it's a quite serious biography of Einstein. And I think in that book there's also quotes about what he's... No, English. No, I have it upstairs. Rick brought it. Rick Benson? He gave it to me.
Why don't you re-gift it to somebody?
Yeah, I could re-gift it. I could lend it to you. It's been sitting here for a few months. I haven't got to read it.
By the way, who wrote Responsibility?
Who wrote?
You wrote the Responsibility.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a missing S. Sorry.
I think it's A-S-I.
Yeah, it's missing an S. I can see response. Okay, my bad. Okay, I did it quickly. So Hashem chose us, and we have, nobody wants to have an extra responsibility. Nobody wants to be bothered by much. And then we want to see what really triggers the hatred, what really makes other people not want us. So let's look at the second day of the month of Sivan. The second day of the month of Sivan is described in our weekly portion. In a weekly portion, by the way, I opened this topic because in the weekly portion we're reading about the giving of the Torah, the historical moment where God descended on Mount Sinai and presented us the Torah, right? Moses, everyone were there. We were there. Our souls were there. It says that all the souls of the Jewish people, whatever generation they lived in, were present at the giving of the Torah. So prior to giving of the Torah, this is what God says, or what is the meaning of the choice? We said in Mount Sinai, this is what God said. The most special day in Exodus. Moses ascended to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, so shall you say to the house of Jacob and tell the sons of Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, mind you, last week, right? The splitting of the Red Sea, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to me, and you shall be to me a kingdom of princes and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel. This is the foundation of, we speak about chosen nation. It appears right here. God says to Moses, deliver to the Jews, convey to them, you shall be to me, a kingdom of princes and a holy nation. God had sanctified us, had uplifted us, had put something special on us that He didn't put on other nations. And, of course, our response when God proposed the Torah was, we shall do and we shall hear. And we live it every morning. You say that prayer, that's it, before when you put tefillin, you say that, right? We say it, right? No, but look at, God is looking for a chosen nation. This is a famous midrash that speaks about the fact that God was looking for a chosen nation. He didn't go by default to the Jews. He went and tried his luck. So this midrash says that an angel went out to the nations and presented the Torah, asking them, would you like to have the Torah? So he went to the nation of Ishmael, and Ishmael asked him, what does the Torah say? And he said, I shall not steal. You should respect the fact that people have possessions, your possessions, their possessions. You cannot do that. But Ishmael said, I'm sorry, I cannot hold by that, because my forefather, Ishmael himself, was given the blessing, so to speak. His hand will be upon all, right? His hand could go into any pocket. His hand could go into your pocket too. It's a blessing, and he blames God for it. He said, God said, Yado bakol. His hand goes into every pocket, everywhere he goes. So he unfortunately cannot take the Torah. And then God went to the nation of Ammon. Ammon came from Lot, and they say again, what does the Torah say? Thou shalt not commit adultery. But Ammon said, I am Ammon. I was born from Lot being with his daughter, right? As horrible as it may sound, but that was the story. Moab and Ammon came from Lot sleeping with his daughters, right? These two nations. So Ammon said, I cannot stand for this. I cannot be in that standard. I'm much lower than that. I cannot expect. And then he goes to the nation of Esav, and again a whole discussion. What is said in the Torah? I shall not murder. And he says, I cannot accept that. You shall live by your sword, is what my forefather was commanded. Esav was given that so-called blessing. So God is looking for all the nations, and then when he finally gets to the Jews, right, and he says, do you like the Torah? And what did the Jews say? You know that joke, right? How much is it for free? Give me 2, right? Like 2 tablets. What is it, right? So the Jews said, yes, we'll take the Torah. So God is looking for his chosen nation, and we know that he was trying. And indeed, he finally found us, and we did declare, and we did say that we were willing to accept the Torah. And that's what we say every morning in the prayer. That's from Shulchan Aruch, from Tur. When reciting the blessing, blessed are you who have chosen us among all nations and gave us his Torah. One should have in mind the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai, how God chose us and gave us his most special gift. So this is something we should have in mind. Every time we say this prayer, we say this blessing. Men and women say this blessing, by the way, in the morning. So we think to ourselves, this is something that had happened, but not only in the history, but it also re-happens every day. God chooses us. God has something for us that he wants from us. God wants us to accomplish something. He casts a mission on us that he doesn't do it on other people. So really, the concept of this choice of God, and probably the most challenging detail in it, is that you cannot avoid it. You cannot just say, okay, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Someone who's born Jewish, if somebody joins a club or somebody joins membership somewhere and then he reads the conditions or he encounters it, he'd say, okay, I'm calling off my membership, give me back my credit card details, right? I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want anything to associate with you. And then he moves on in his life. But being Jewish is not only a question of what you believe in, it's a question of who you are. That's why Judaism is very complicated, because it's a combination between race and faith, right? It's not only someone not born Jewish, but believing in Judaism, becoming Jewish, right? That's not race but faith. And then you can have someone who's born Jewish, but they have nothing to do with their Judaism. And guess what? They're as Jewish as Moses or Abraham or anyone else, right? They're Jewish. Jewish is Jewish. It doesn't matter what they say or what they think or what they believe in. So it's a combination of both. We find that Moses was challenged by it. Remember the story, burning bush? Moses saw the burning bush, and Rabbeinu Bechaye brings a fascinating idea about the burning bush. Moses was brought up as Egyptian, right? Remember, he brought up in Pharaoh's palace as the son of Pharaoh's daughter. And then he realized he was Jewish. His mother slowly told him. He went outside. He saw this Egyptian killing the Jew. He killed the Egyptian. He ran away. he realized he was Jewish. And then he thought to himself, you know, all this Jewish thing everybody's telling me about, oh, the Jews are smart, the Jews are successful. Hello, if you've been reading the news, the Jews have been tortured in Egypt for 210 years. They're slaves, they're slaughtering their babies, they're killing the men, the women, the children. Is this something you want to be a part of? Is this something you want to be proud of, being Jewish in this time of age? That's what he's confronted by. He's thinking to himself, God speaking about the chosen nation. What chosen? What nation? We're a bunch of slaves. We can't do anything on our own. We're stuck in Egypt and there's no end to it, right? And then God shows him this burning bush. What is the burning bush? Rabbeinu Bechaya explains a very interesting thing. This is called the thorn bush was burning with fire, but the thorn bush was not being consumed. These are the Jews. The bush are the Jews. They are always surrounded by troubles and enemies, but miraculously survive. Rabbeinu Bechaya says, yes, there's fire, but you know what? The bush remains. It stays around. It doesn't matter that there's fire. And the miracle is, you'd say, okay, what's the problem? It's a bush growing in the desert. It's there. Nobody touches it. The miracle is it, and the beauty of it, so to speak, if you'd like to say it, is that it is burning, but it doesn't consume. It is burning. There's fire. There's real fire happening there, but it doesn't consume. The fire is always looking to get rid of the bush, but guess what? God is telling Moses, you feel embarrassed to be Jewish. You should know, the Egyptians, they're going to fade away in history. But you're a bush. The bush does not consume. You were here, and you will be here. You will stay here. You will remain here. That's what God shows Moses. Let me close the door.
Moses wasn't circumcised.
Moses wasn't circumcised.
So what would you do now? Was he had to convert? Did he go take a mikvah?
Well, Moses was brought up by his own mother, by the way. You know the story that when Batya picked him up from the water and he was crying and they wanted to feed him, but they didn't have instant formula in those days. They needed to feed him, breastfeed him. And Moses was crying. He was probably hungry. He didn't eat for quite some time. And they went to try and feed him with Egyptian women. Guess what? He didn't want to eat. He was crying. He didn't want to eat. His mouth, the mouth that is going to communicate with God, the mouth that is going to convey the words of God, did not want to take something from someone impure. So Batya was all challenged, trying to feed the baby, screaming. He probably had a good voice. He knew how to scream. It was already becoming troublesome. And Miriam, Moses' sister, not telling Batya who she was, approached and said, maybe I should get you some Jewish woman to feed this baby. Guess who she calls? The mother. The mother of Moses is actually brought by the sister of Moses, which the daughter of Pharaoh does not know of this conspiracy, of course, Jewish conspiracy. And she calls the mother, and of course, the boy takes from the mother and feeds. And Batya says, oh, you look like you get along with this baby. Why don't you sit here, be with me, and take care of the baby? So they did give him the Jewish education he needed. It was an interesting story how it all unveiled. Was he circumcised? I think he was. He circumcised his kids because the angel came to him after he left Midian without circumcising, and this whole story, he had to circumcise his kids. So it was circumcised before. I'm sorry. It was when Batya saw the baby, she opened the diaper and she saw it was circumcised. Okay, so she said he was Jewish, but she rather not tell anything to her father.
That's it.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry.
He created a conspiracy. By the way, they want to save him. Hence, they said give it to Batya.
Right.
Batya. This was natural.
Yeah. Yeah. Everything fell into place.
God knew
yes.
What was going on.
Yes. Absolutely.
I'm going to take about that the milk of a woman who was willing to give the milk to a baby. I cannot say that the milk is not pure.
The woman is not pure. Not the milk is not pure. For someone like me and you, it's not a big deal. But for someone who is bound to speak to God, it becomes a big deal. Again, this is something that's brought as an exception, as something special. So it doesn't say that Moses was putting here. Moses was about to speak to God, and Moses had different standards than anyone else. So it's not coming to belittle the Egyptians or their milk, although the attribute of cruelty was abundant in Egypt, and I'm sure it wasn't only the men who had that cruelty. I mean, you could see not too long ago, 70 years ago, Nazi Germany, and not only the Germans, the Poles and the Ukrainians and the Hungarians, it wasn't just the men that were cruel, the women hated Jews the same. So, put that into that equation, that the Egyptians were not really friendly to Jews, so to speak, and when nurturing a baby, when a baby has the milk from a woman, it's inevitable that there's some of the qualities, some of the character traits would also be influential on that baby. So Moses, having such a role of being the prophet, of speaking to God, would refrain at all costs from having a woman, an Egyptian woman's milk. In any event, what exactly is our role? Rabbeinu Bechai explains beautifully, we are the bush, and the bush is burning. It's always burning, but it never being consumed. And what exactly do God want from us? So this is what the Talmud says. Mind you, this is Hebrew. Sinai is the name of the mountain. Sinai is hatred. Talmud, Tractate Shabbat, Rav Chia and Rabbah, son of Rav Huna, both said, what is the reason it is called Mount Sinai? It is because it is a mountain upon which hatred, Sinah, that's Hebrew, for the nations of the world descended, their hatred to the Jews started there. Here you go. You want to pinpoint where anti-Semitism came to power at the very first glance. It's when God chose the Jews and gave us the Torah on Mount Sinai. Why is it called Sinai? The word Sinah in Hebrew, hatred. The word Sinai. So you would imagine the mountain of hatred. Isn't that a beautiful name for a mountain that the Torah is given on? Well, of course it's not, but, the words are similar, and the rabbis in the Talmud said Sinai, Sinah. So indeed, the Gemara is quite straightforward by saying that the base and the core of anti-Semitism is because we are different. Once they hated us because we were too rich, and then again we hated us because we were too poor. Once because we stick out too much, and then the next time because we don't stick out and we're too, scattered around everything. But what lies beneath the surface of all of these reasoning is the fact that we are different. And that bothers the other people quite seriously. And of course they respond in this way of anti-Semitism. Now, what exactly does it mean being different? Our body, is it different than anyone else? Do we look different? You take anyone from here, from the street, or anyone, do we look like, the fact that we, you could take someone from the same countries we come. My parents come, my father comes from North Africa, and my mother comes from Eastern Europe, and I guess, I kind of look like a mix of both. But if you have someone non-Jews who come from the same family, will probably be looking just like me and growing the same beard like me, and maybe talking like me. What is this whole difference about? Is it something within our soul? But then you'd say the soul is different to every individual. So what is it what's that difference? What lies beneath it? What does God really want from us by choosing us? You want to comment something? Elizabeth, you want?
I asked about difference because I have an experience in Paris when I was, before I studied Chinese, I was always interested to know Chinese. And I think I tried, I had some, use some Chinese, but they would not, and then I did try to make friends with his classmates and with the parents, but I was, it's a very close community. And I think I felt quite disturbed by the fact that I could go into their restaurant to eat Chinese food, but then whatever happened on weekends, I know there are celebrations, whatever, Chinese opera, I was not taken in, but everything changed when after I studied Chinese.
But you're still a Weigoren. You will always be a Weigoren, even if you speak Chinese.
No, I was completely taken in the community. They did not even notice me. And I think in some countries, I think the hostility of people might be because when the community is closed to outsiders, because they are a minority just like the Chinese are in Paris. And I think that can create a feeling of hostile feeling, because I felt
ostracizing.
wanted to know more about, and they would not let me because I was not Chinese.
I'll tell you a second about that hostility, being different and reacting in a hostile way. I'll tell you soon a story I brought also about this hostility. Yeah, we are different, but you would think you're French, and maybe you're born in France. My mother was born in France, and her father, although immigrated from Poland, but they were never French. They were always Jews. They're always Juif. And they're also Jews that are born in America or England or Canada or anywhere else, or even Africa, okay? But they're always Jews. You speak the same language, you might be high in politics, you might be helping everyone, you might be a great person, many people like you, but you're Jewish. It's always there. What's wrong? What's, you know?
Is it because Jews call themselves Israel and so they're not following the man? They're not.
Israel is 70 years old, Emery. Israel is 70 years old. I'm talking to you about something that's 4,000 or 5,000 years old. Israel 70. When is it? 1948 is Israel.
But don't Jews always say we are Israel?
No, but Jews always are separated from other people, even though, I mean, my grandmother was from Hungary, but she wouldn't speak Hungarian. She spoke Yiddish. So Jews always separated.
But even if she would have spoken Hungarian, she would still be Jewish.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think minorities everywhere are always
That's true
wrong.
too.
Are always wrong. Even if you look at the history of Taiwan, the Hakka people,
Mm-hmm.
they were called guests.
It's called Kajari. They're called guests. They're guests.
Yes, yeah, they were, and they were relegating all the good land went to the Minnan people. The Hakka had to do with the hilltops. So they're in tea culture now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Now it's the other way around. Everyone appreciates that the Hakka culture has. Yeah.
But I mean, they were.
Yeah, of course. I know some of the history, not all of the history, but
So
I know.
tell us the secret. Why are Jews always? I mean, people don't like Jews, but the thing is, they go to reach out.
I'll tell you the story in a second.
We look too similar, but we are different. I think if we were black with a tail and bones,
Yeah,
but we look the same.
we look the same, but we're different from the inside.
And I think it's human nature to try to. No, but they get mad if Jews dress differently.
They get mad at Jews regardless of what the reasons change. The core stays, the reasons change. Because of, that's a variant. Maybe because of this, but the actual, they get mad at Jews, and it's been consistent in most countries. You brought China, India, I could say that there was very little Jewish presence there altogether. And one could say, okay, well, there were never too many Jews to begin with, so it wasn't like a big movement. But in any event, what we're trying to, again, I said earlier that attempting to answer this question is very dare of me. It's I don't think I could get covered everything, but we could touch upon what relates to our weekly portion, to the chosen concept, to what God gave us the Torah. So Judaism is not the only religion in the world. There are many other religions, but it is unique with the fact that it encompasses and surrounds all of our lives. Everything we do has to do with a mitzvah. Everything we do or we abstain from doing, the way we dress, the way we eat, the way we marry, the way we pray, the way we live, the way we travel, everything. You could say, right, for instance, a Jew eats differently, kosher food, right? A Jew dresses differently. We wear tzitzit, we're not supposed to wear shatnez, which is wool and linen together, as a rule of God. The Jews prays differently. Not only goes to the temple to do bye-bye or goes to a service, the Jew prays all the time. Say a blessing before you eat, after you eat, right? You wear tefillin, you put tzedakah. The Jew marries differently. A man, a woman, the Jew marries differently. We have the time of the monthly period. We separate ourselves. We get back together. The Jew lives differently. We go into a house. We put the mezuzah on the door. What's wrong with you? You buy this beautiful house. No, I need to put a mezuzah on the door. It's a Jewish thing. The Jews does business differently. The laws of interest, according to the Torah, you're not supposed to charge interest or benefit from interest. Right? The laws of charity, tithe, 10% of your profit always has to go to the poor people. You always have to be considerate to the people that are lower than you. This is not just a matter of good heart. It's a part of our laws. It's a part of our rules. Now you could choose to do it or not to do it, but that you cannot take it away from the book of laws. So the religion Judaism is different because it covers every field of life. it doesn't give you one single thing that remains completely yours. God says, everything you do, I'm with you. I could tell you this you should do, this you shouldn't do. I could advise you, I could instruct you, but there's no such thing as, God, you take your time and I'll be here doing a little bit, minding my own business. No such thing in Judaism, minding my own business. Everything is God's business. Everything is the Torah's business. And we have several sages, several quotes from the Talmud, Rani, Masechet Makot, Tractate Makot. Rabbi Shimlai taught 613, Richard, for you, 613 mitzvot stated to Moses in the Torah, consisting of 365 prohibitions, corresponding to the number of days in a solar year, and 248 positive mitzvot, corresponding to the number of a person's limbs. You could see everything that we have, our limbs, our organs, from God. 248 mitzvot. Midrash Rabbah, look in Dvarim, wherever you go and whatever you do, the mitzvot will accompany you. When you build a new house, you shall make a guardrail for your roof. When you make a door, you shall inscribe them upon your doorpost, a mezuzah. When you wear a new garment, you shall not wear a mixture of wool and linen together. And if you went to harvest, you need to make sure to leave some of the field for the poor people. If you just walk in the street, just walking, doing your own business, minding your own business, and you could see a bird's nest, there's a mitzvah you should take. If you want to take the children, you have to make sure the mother is not there. Everything you turn, whatever you go, there's a mitzvah. So it wasn't always like that. For 2,000 years, when the world was created, before the Torah was introduced, God had demanded from human beings seven Noahide laws, right? Simple 7 laws. I shall not kill, I shall not steal, right? Family adultery and so on. And that's sufficient until today. For billions of people, God does not require more than 7 Noahide laws. Just 7 laws. But then comes this group of people, and this is, if you know the math, Ruben is in here, he went to Argentina. The math is from 7, you go to 613. It's more than 6,000% more, right? And the question is, what is really the destination? What is the purpose of all that? And this is a very interesting midrash from Bereshit. And this is what the midrash says. Do you really think that the Holy One of Blessing cares if an animal is slaughtered by front or by the back of the neck? Therefore, mitzvot were only given to make humans better. This speaks about a level of godliness. This is a little deep. I did bring that quote, but it's a little deep. According to this midrash, the mitzvot are not for God. And as if God does not care if you wear it tefillin here, or you wear it here, or you put it on your head, or you don't put it all together. Who is it for? It's actually for us. God wants us to become better. God wants us to have a meaningful life. God wants us to be able to do something that's important, that's meaningful, that's productive. And that's why He gave us all this mitzvot. And we know that this tendency people have not to be religious is not modern age. Also, you think 2,000 years ago everyone were religious, everyone were rabbis? No. There were secular people, there were not religious people, there were heresy, there were heretics, right? And we know it from the Torah, pagans, we know Korach, the story that he surrounded, that he had rebelled with Moses. He was a great public speaker. So he used to give a speech. This is what the speech consists of. And he's telling a story. He's blaming Moses and Aaron and the whole Torah. He's telling a story about an old widow. And he says as follows, I have a neighbor, she's an old widow, and she has to provide for her family, but she has a little field. So she has a little field, and she wants to plow the field, but Torah says, or Moses and Aaron said, don't use an ox and a donkey together. Oh, you can't do that. So she wants to plant the field, and Moses said, you shall not sow with a mixture of seeds. You can't put too many things together at the same time. And then she wants to harvest. Moses said, oh, you can't harvest everything. You have to leave a portion for the poor people to take. She's taking the fruits home. She got what she takes. According to the Torah, once you bring it home, that becomes, you have to give a tithe. You have to give 10%. So as she's bringing the fruits home, hold it, 10% goes, right? And then she says, okay, I can't handle this field. Too many things. She's going to buy sheep. She's trading the field for sheep. She's going to get sheep. So then, sheep, the firstborn of the sheep goes to the temple. Shearing the wool of the sheep. The first of the fleece, you have to give the Kohen, the priest. And she said, okay, I can't handle the sheep. Let's slaughter the sheep. Where do you slaughter the sheep? You have to give a portion of it to the holy temple, right? The foreleg, the jaws, the maw goes to the... So that's what Korach said. He gave it as a speech. That's his street talk. He gave it as a speech against Moses, against Aaron. But really, of course, what happened to Korach? He fell in the ground. He got swallowed in the ground. Nothing was left of him. But his wonder is really interesting. And just before we answer this directly, we'll touch upon one last thing with regards to the difference between chosen and racism, because it's very easy to mix the two and to think that it might be the same. But the difference is actually the chosen nation comes with extra responsibility without added merit. This is, I was looking for words, and Elizabeth's message have a lot of words. So this is I copied some of your words. Generosity, justice, kindness, tolerance, courage, moral behavior are required to be a chosen nation. Racism is adding merits to yourself while revoking them from others. Saying, I'm so special, I'm so good, therefore I deserve A, B, C, D. And you don't deserve A, B, C, D because you're inferior to me. That's racism. Chosen means I have a mission and I have to be on top of many things. Not I deserve things, but I need to prove myself. It's a responsibility. There's no added merits to it. I don't go around walking around like who knows what, saying, oh, look at me, I'm chosen. No, if I'm chosen, then I have to do something about it. Then I have to prove myself. I'm constantly on a test. I'm constantly being watched. It's a chosen person, right? There's a story with President Zachary Taylor, President of the United States. And you know this famous story that when he was elected president, and then he was supposed to take the oath, right, go into the office. It was a Sunday. He couldn't do it on a Sunday because he was a devout Christian. He couldn't do it on a Sunday. He had to do it on a Monday. But the presidency expired on that Sunday, so someone had to be the president. But the new president, you know, it's brought in the U.S. Senate website. You can look at the story. There's a guy named Atchison. Yeah, you know that, right? And then he was elected. He had to be president for 24 hours because the new president couldn't take office till the next day, till Monday. So the whole noon Sunday through noon Monday, this guy Atchison was the president. But our friend Atchison liked to drink, and on Saturday night he drank a lot, and he became completely drunk, and he actually slept through the day. So he was president, and he was asleep. And then Atchison expressed himself. He said that it was the most honest presidency that the United States ever had, ever in the history. So he was president for 24 hours, and most of the time he was asleep. So you imagine how much missing a challenge could be, missing such an opportunity. So chosen nation, it means that we have a responsibility. It doesn't mean that people are inferior to us. And that's answering your question about hostility is the story of Rabbi Yitro Halberstam. He survived Holocaust, and he told the story. He told it himself. He lost in the Holocaust his wife. He had 11 children when he got to Auschwitz. They all died. He was put into hard work, of course, and the people knew he was the Tzanzer Rebbe, Kloisenberg Tzanz, and the people knew who he was because he was encouraging the other Jews that were with him in the camp. And one time the Nazi came to him, and a Nazi officer came to him and told him in German, he spoke German of course, do you think you're a member of the chosen nation? So Rabbi Halberstam responded, yes. He said yes. So the Nazi hit him and he screamed, are you sure you're chosen? And he said yes. And the Nazi starts stepping on him, and his mouth was full of blood because he hit him in his mouth, and he was lying on the floor. And the Nazi, he freaked out. He said, how could you be chosen? What do you think? What makes you chosen? What makes you think you're chosen? Look at you, you're on the floor, you're full of blood. And the Rebbe of Yitro Halberstam of blessed memory, he told him, when I look at you and I see your cruelty, I see your viciousness, and we, Jewish people, we don't even pick up our hands against a fly. We don't do all these things. I understand. You're exempling, you're showing me how I'm chosen at this very moment. When I see how you could get to such a low level, you could be so abusive, you could be so vicious, so cruel, you could murder all these people without even thinking about it, whereas I would never ever be tempted to do that. That actually exhibits furthermore how much I'm chosen. Well, the Nazi took that answer and left, and Rabbi Halberstam survived the Holocaust. He remarried afterwards, but he told that story. He lived off to tell that story and say, yeah, chosen. What does it mean, chosen? That means that I'm not in a state that I'm racist. I'm not in a state that I'm taking advantage. I'm exploiting the weak. No, chosen, it means that I'm responsible for the weak. And you could look at it, by the way, a lot of the human rights organizations are headed by Jews. Not religious Jews, not pro-Israel Jews. Some of the human rights agencies are supporting the Palestinians or whatever, right? You know, now recently with Pittsburgh, right? Remember Pittsburgh? What was the story in Pittsburgh? He went in, and you know the terrorist attack that took place. Those people in Pittsburgh were supporting immigrants, right? This was a group of people that this is in the 19th century. They supported Jewish immigrants to the United States. Nowadays, there aren't too many Jewish immigrants to the United States, so they support Syrian immigrants, and they support all these. That synagogue in Pittsburgh, and this guy, you know, that's what he had against him. You're supporting all these guys. Yeah, we're in a state of power. We're actually utilizing our power to help the weak, and not to be exploited, not to be abusive of the weak. So this clarification brings us more into the meaning of what it means to be chosen. It means that I have a role, I have a mission to fulfill. It means I have a standard I need to live by. And of course, how did this relates with what we said about the mitzvot, about the Torah. And this is what Richard told me earlier, a story with Bill Gates. 6 years ago, 2013, in Israel was one of the... No, that was Bill Gates' the story. I couldn't see the... Yeah, so 2013 was a big deal in Israel where Warren Buffett, what is it called? Berkshire Hathaway, right? Yeah, so Warren Buffett bought some Israeli companies, like a big deal, a big business, a group of companies, and right, something like that. And they had some Israelis that Bill Gates is one of the members of the directors of Warren Buffett's company. And one of the Israeli news anchors was there, and he actually had a talk with Bill Gates. So Bill Gates told him the story. He went to verify, and I got the video. Let me show you the video of this story. Richard knows the story, but I got the video. I thought this was a made-up story, and then I got the video. Let me show you what it is. This guy is Stevie Bernhard. Okay, let's see. He's Jewish, all right. And let's see if I can hear it. Can we hear it from here?
Ever heard of leopardology? Kivi Bernhard,
Let me see. How can I do that? Will you hear it? I have it. No. I have it. We could do it from... There we go. Is this okay?
From South Africa, wrote a few
Yeah. Okay, start.
Ever heard of leopardology? Kivi Bernhard, originally from South Africa, wrote a book a few years ago about what we can learn from leopards and how to hunt for profit in a tough global economy. The book was an instant bestseller, making Kivi one of the sought-after international speakers. One day, Kivi gets a phone call from the Speakers Bureau inviting him to deliver the opening address at a very important Microsoft conference. Hundreds of vendors from around the world were going to be there, including Bill Gates himself. Even for Kivi, this was a huge opportunity.
And I saw that the particular date that they were asking me for happened to be a Saturday, which of course is Shabbat. I immediately said, it's a Saturday, and as you know, I don't work on Saturdays.
Next thing he knows, Kivi receives a phone call from one of the senior vice presidents of Microsoft, offering an exorbitant sum of money.
He says, double? Triple? What do you need? I'll send you the check, you write it. I said, John, it's not about money. It's about Sabbath observance. Bam! Phone slams down.
With no choice left, Microsoft had to change the date so Kiwi could deliver his talk.
I said, great, I'm in for triple the fee. Just kidding.
A few months later, Kiwi got a phone call from this senior vice president of Microsoft, who shared with him how he had just been with Bill Gates on his private jet with a bunch of top executives. And we're talking about Kiwi in the conference.
And John explained, he says, yeah, it was the craziest thing, you know. We had this guy, Kiwi, who was supposed to be the opening keynote speaker, and we just couldn't get him to commit to the Saturday platform because he's Sabbath observant. And John is explaining this to Mr. Vance, and he's saying, listen, we tried to make it happen, and we even threw money at him. He just wouldn't budge. He just wouldn't budge off the Sabbath. And John shares with me that when Mr. Gates heard this, Mr. Gates said back to John, that's what happens when you have something that money can't buy.
That's what happens when you have something that money can't buy. So that's Bill Gates. Huh? I thought this story was made up. I found that video. I saw this. Really, the guy. This is Kiwi Bernhard.
2 years ago. All the Jews were like, he wears a kippah. He wears a kippah.
Yeah.
He's a Sabbath observant.
So that's something money. That's what happens when you have something money can't buy. That's Bill Gates saying that. And indeed, this is the story behind what God wants from us. God wants from us, He brought us into this world and He gave us challenges. Let's look at what Torah tells us in the beginning of Genesis. What is it? Here. And the Lord God commanded man, saying, of every tree of garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it, for on the day that you eat thereof you shall surely die. God puts Adam and Eve in the garden and says, you should eat from all the trees. You see that tree over there? Don't touch, don't eat it. Why would you put that tree there? Why did you put a fence, an electric fence around? Why you put the tree here in front of us and telling us not to eat it? What do you want from us? Of course we'll go eat it. That's the first tree we'll try, right? As soon as you said not to eat it, don't touch it. Yeah, what does God want from us? Why is this whole thing, right? So this is what the Midrash says. We brought it when we spoke on last Tuesday. We brought this Midrash. When I came to my garden, yes, please.
When I came to my garden, my sister bride,
Reb Shmuel,
Samuel bar Nachman,
Yeah.
said, when the Holy One, blessed be He, created the world, He longed to have an abode below just as He had on high. Having created Adam, He commanded and said to him, Genesis, you may freely eat of any tree in the garden, but as for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you may not eat of it. Then he transgressed against His commandment. The Holy One, blessed be He, said this to him, this is what I long for, that just as I have a dwelling on high, I will likewise have one below. Now when I have given you one command, you have not kept it. Immediately the Holy One, blessed be He, removed His divine presence up to the first firmament. When Moses arose, he brought down the divine presence to earth, as stated, and the Lord came down on Mount Sinai.
Sinai, right? So the answer that lies beneath here, what does God want from us? He puts that thing because He wants us to do something. He wants us to be productive. He wants us, He's built us this garden, this house, this world, and He wants us to make this world into a functional one. He wants to make this world into a dwelling place. That's why He put the tree over there, in order for the person to say, I don't want to eat. I want to eat from the tree, but I won't eat from the tree because that's what God commanded me. But a person is able to subdue his evil inclination. And unfortunately, it was a test, it was a trial, and it failed. What happened? They eat. And then guess what? The son of Adam kills his brother, and it becomes more and more severe. And every generation, somebody else pushes God away from the picture, pushes God away higher and higher, more elevated, more exalted. And then comes the righteous people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and they draw God down into this world. And indeed, when we think about it, what is it about when our life is holy? You know, if somebody goes to visit Buckingham Palace or a palace of some sort, you would see that every detail in the palace reflects royalty. Everything that appears there is royal. It's not only the old queen, if you go see her, it's everything, you know, the chandeliers and the paintings on the wall and the way the guards are walking and the special etiquette there is in the palace. Everything is around that. And this is what the mitzvot is all about. When the mitzvot appears, it actually encompasses all our lives. It's not only for what we need to do. It's to create a perfect synergy between godliness and between the world. And we have an example from that, which is during Operation Protective Edge, Sukeitan in 2014. If you remember the story, how the three young boys were kidnapped and were murdered, and that led to Israel's biggest operation in Gaza to date, which was discovering all those tunnels, those terror tunnels that were a big threat. And of course, as it goes, a few days after they started the operation, so the Security Council of the UN gathered together, and as usual, they're going to condemn Israel with what Israel is doing, although it's just protective, it's Syrian. But this time, they were pretty sure that this is going to work, but they needed 9 votes for against Israel. But the South Korean ambassador to the UN abstained, and they couldn't get 9 votes. You're moving it?
Oops, sorry on that.
No worries. Okay. So a few days. That's our 9th vote. A few days after the vote, there's a guy named Saul Werdiger. He has, Schechter? Schechter lives here. He works with Saul Werdiger. So I confirmed the story with him. He said it's true. Saul Werdiger gets a phone call from the UN embassy, from the UN ambassador, South Korean ambassador to the UN. And he says to him that recently, in those days, he abstained from 3 votes against Israel. 3 votes he abstained. South Korea, you would think, what does South Korea have with Israel? Yeah, there's some trade, there's some economy, some high-tech, but why would South Korea be for Israel? But he abstained. And he says, of course, not only myself, I also made on behalf of my government, we abstained against Israel. But he said, I also have a personal interest. It turns out this ambassador has a daughter, and she works for Saul Werdiger. She's a designer. She's a designer of clothes, and she works for Saul Werdiger. And she's telling her daddy, Saul Werdiger lives in the United States, and she's telling her daddy about the new job she has. She's Korean, right? And she works, and she says, you won't believe it. It's such a beautiful place. She said, she's telling stories about Jewish people, because they don't know a lot of Jewish people in South Korea. Rabbi Litzman, my friend, but not too many. And she says, I could see how these people could combine matter and spirit, could combine, work, physical work, with everything that's behind it. She says every day 1:30 in the afternoon, the office stops and the men are congregating to say the prayer of Mincha, right? And then Saturday is a day off for everyone, Jews and non-Jews alike. You get a day off. You get a day off on Sunday too. But of course, Saturday, day off completely. No emails, no activity for the company, not even meeting someone abroad, sending an email. No, that's not, according to the policy, they're not supposed to do that. And thirdly, she says to her father, whoever walks into the office to ask for a donation is never being sent out empty-handed. Maybe not a big donation, but everyone who walks in comes out with something. So she's telling her father all these things about the Jewish people, and that triggers her father to do what he can, the South Korean ambassador to the UN, for the Jewish people. So that's her impression, just a normal Korean girl who works for a Jewish company in New York, but she can see a lot of things that other people couldn't see.
And in fact,
what?
The South Koreans are very Christian, a lot of them are. They follow the Old Testament.
Right.
So they also translate the Talmud.
Yeah, they work a lot around the Talmud.
There's a lot of feeling between.
Yeah, I agree.
You agree? Finally, agree with me.
So here's what Tanya chapter 37 says: when the whole neshama and divine soul of all Israel, which is divided into 600,000 particular offshoots, and each particular soul will fulfill all the 613 commandments, because each one could do some 613. The 365 prohibition to restrain the 365 blood vessels of the vital soul in their body, so as not to receive nurture or vitality through that is formed. To that sin from one of the 3 completely unclean klipot. Klipot is the wrong side, the bad side. The 248 positive precepts, in order to draw the light of the blessed Ein Sof earthwards. Ein Sof, it means infinite, so as to raise up to Him and bind and unite with Him the totality of the vital soul, which is in the 248 organs of the body. Thus, when the totality of the vital soul of the community of Israel will be wholly Merkava. Merkava is a vehicle for God. Then shall the general vitality of the world, now constituted the Klipat Noga, which is the other Klipot, which is not completely impure, emerge from its impurity and filth and ascend onto holiness and become a Merkava for God. What Tanya explains in Kabbalistic words, in simple words, is that we have a mission, and once we stick to our mission, and once we do what we need to do, that affects everyone, Jews and non-Jews alike. When we fulfill our task, when we do what we need to do, then the rest of the people will follow, and the rest of the people will follow the same path and do what they need to do. So just to summarize, this is what the mitzvah, we spoke about mitzvahs, God surrounding us with mitzvahs. You think of reward, and this is what Yom Yom says. This is a quote from the previous Rebbe. Mitzvah is an idiom of tzavta. Tzavta, it means joining, attachment. Whoever performs a mitzvah becomes joined to the essence of God, may be blessed, who issues that particular command. This is the meaning of the word of a mitzvah, is the mitzvah itself. His becoming attached to the essence of Ein Sof, infinite, who ordained the command, is itself his reward. Just by God giving us an opportunity to connect to him is what we need to be thankful for. So, just to summarize, why are we different? We've answered a little bit. It's because of our Torah. That's because of what we need to do. What do we need to do with that? It means that we need to take that forward and be proud of who we are and fulfill our mission. And once we do that, that affects everyone else, and they also fulfill their mission in life.
What's this say? What's this mean? Where's that in Torah about this?
Where's the Torah? This is the whole Torah. It's about seeing you next week. Even this week, you're right. I should have limited myself only to next week. Stop streaming.
I want to ask you a question.